Alice Cooper has been proclaimed the icon of horror rock and has remained an icon for musicians for decades. His extreme live performances and addictive personality have let Alice Cooper star in movies, host his own radio show, and make numerous cameos across all film and TV. In this documentary, we will tour through Alice's rise to fame, his influences, and get opinions from real-life musicians and fans to share their stories of the rock legend. Before he was Alice Cooper, Vincent Damon Furnier was born in Detroit, Michigan with his mother and father, living in trailer parks. Vincent eventually settled in Phoenix, Arizona at the age of 12, where he attended Cortez High School. In the school's yearbook, he planned to become a million record seller and took a liking to music at a very young age. Vincent gathered 4 cross-country teammates to form a band for the Letterman's School Talent Show. Although only miming their instruments, the band took it on themselves to learn them and began to play locally around Phoenix. Alice inherited his theatrical performance qualities as they originally played to encourage their high school track team.
And every team in Arizona was terrified of us because they would be out stretching, getting ready. We put bells, little jingle bells on our shoes.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all you'd hear is ching, 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 ching. And we all came out in a pack.
His inspiration, his main inspiration, came from the same place as mine did, the Beatles, which is where the name the Earwigs came from. It was kind of, oh, they're the Beatles, so we'll be something else, but in the same area.
The Earwigs covered Beatles songs with the lyrics slightly parodied to support their track team.
The very first time we did that show for the Letterman's Club talent show, Beatle wigs, the whole thing, there was a guillotine on stage and there was a guy in a coffin.
The shock horror thing, he hadn't really thought about it before. It wasn't until he saw the horror that created that he's decided to branch out into other things.
After reaching local acclaim, the band changed their name to the Spiders and placed a huge spider's net behind the band's drummer John Spear, finally renamed to the Nazz.
I want to shock an audience. I want them to sort of go on a journey. It's a story from beginning to end, and I want them to see this story with me and live it with me. It's just a wonderful experience.
The Nazz exhausted their local bar scene and moved to Los Angeles. The band settled on their sound, which involved a dark, aggressive, and horror-like edge. The group eventually caught the attention of rock legend and record dealer Frank Zappa, whilst Alice was playing in Arizona. Alice's band rehearsed for an audition in hopes to get a record deal with Bizarre Records, which was a company owned by Frank Zappa, who looked out for unique and experimental bands that were not in the taste of the mainstream audiences. Some examples of this would be Captain Beefheart, Tim Buckley, and the G2Os. Frank had a very wide taste for music and despised industry leaders tampering with music and conforming with music industry norms. Zappa adored to find the unique.
Even if you don't like or understand what the record is that's coming in the door, the person who is in the executive chair may not be the final arbiter of taste of the entire population, you know? The young guys are more conservative and more dangerous to the art form than the old guys with the cigars ever were, you know, who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
And they just did all sorts of immature and insane things, which I think just appealed to Frank. I think he saw, here I've got 5 people that are totally as crazy as I am. Here's a guy called Alice, you know, and everybody wants to know the reason why.
They were opening act for us several times, and invariably when they would play, thousands of people would leave the room, and I knew they had something.
These albums certainly did not feature Alice in the spotlight, so Alice moved back to Detroit to be signed to Warner Brothers Records.
His first appearance on Top of the Pops, and it became his last, because the producers on Top of the Pops said, we've heard about your reputation and everything, but you're going to have to curb it for British TV. If you step out of line, it'll be your last appearance. And he basically grabs a girl by the hair and puts a sword to her neck. When in the UK, when people were interviewing Alice, they would do it from the opposite side of the room because they didn't trust him. They didn't know what he was going to do because they all thought he was a bit of a loose cannon. And, you know, it created the legend.
Alice appeared in multiple films, including a band cameo in Diary of a Mad Housewife, an episode of the Snoop Sisters, and eventually in 1974, Alice starred as himself in a documentary called Good to See You Again, Alice Cooper. However, this fame was short-lived after Alice's band would eventually split up in 1975 over multiple issues, primarily being Alice's alcohol and substance abuse problems, which ultimately degraded the band.
He was drinking 4 or 5 bottles of whiskey a day and 3 or 4 cases of Budweiser beer. And he was doing that every day, and he was in a constant state of drunkenness. His wife Cheryl told him one day that they were going to go out for a meal. It wasn't a hotel she was taking him to, it was a sanitarium.
Glenn Buxton, who was Alice's guitarist, particularly took a strong stance on drugs and called it a sickness.
And he wondered if he could ever be Alice without the drink. He needed something to replace the alcohol. So somebody suggested golf to him, and he became totally addicted to golf rather than returning to alcohol.
Alice performed under his stage name Alice Cooper prior to this. However, in the same year, Alice legally changed his name to Alice Cooper. Alice became a household name in slasher and horror, and eventually started making appearances in The Muppet Show, St. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, and most notably Wayne's World.
And in that he plays himself in his band, and basically Wayne and Garth, kind of just the 2 characters in the film, they kind of worship him, and they get VIP tickets to go see him, and he's like some sort of god to them, and he's just basically, he's himself, he's like really himself, which is such a character for him to play.
Obviously one of the memorable characters that he plays is Freddy Krueger's dad, which is quite funny because when you actually see it, you know that it's Alice Cooper and it's appropriate that he would be in a horror film. But yeah, I mean, just funny little cameos like that.
Ever since, his methods to shock the audience have progressed. Alice stages his execution on stage after every live performance, using a 40-pound guillotine that just misses him every night. Other times, Alice has been known to use a hangman's noose, using fake blood, swords, and severed fake heads.
I'm the singer in 2 other bands, Blitzkrieg and Satan, and doing a Blitzkrieg gig or a Satan gig is nowhere near as hard as doing one Alice Cooper gig. Whatever you would see at an Alice Cooper show, you see at our show. We do the guillotine, we do the gallows, we were doing the electric chair. I get stabbed several times throughout the show. Working with the nurse, Nurse Rosetta, she kind of beats Alice throughout the show. So it's a very physical thing, and usually I'm covered in bruises after a show.
Alice has also sung whilst handling 2 boa constrictors, which are one of the largest species of snake in the world. Alice has owned many of these. His current snake is named Christopher, after Christopher Lee, and previous snakes he has dubbed Count Strangula and Cobra Winfrey.
But I think he had one in a hotel room that actually escaped, and they couldn't find it for like a week or something. So, you know, it's a classic sort of, you know, story about him that, you know, only he would have a snake in a hotel room that would go and escape.
Alice has always wanted his shows to be theatrical, shocking, and outrageous, once even decapitating a baby doll on stage.
As Alice himself once said, if a kid pays $6 to see my show, he's not going to see just some guy playing a guitar.
Drew of Alice. Well, I know this character inside out now because I've been playing it now for nearly 5 years. And Alice is a homicidal maniac. If there is no doubt that he is a homicidal maniac. He's a guy playing the part of a lunatic that has a split personality. He has, on one side he has the little boy, Stephen, on the other side he has the homicidal maniac, which is Alice. And he's backwards and forwards between the two throughout the show. Having done what I've been doing with the Alice Cooper show, I respected him massively before I started doing it, but now it's beyond respect. It's what can I say? Alice is just the ultimate showman.
I lived in Phoenix for about 6 months, and what I came across that Alice Cooper was really big in Phoenix, and at the time one of the novelties was actually going to the restaurant Cooperstown, which was it's like a combination of a rock bar and a sports bar, and it was just an interesting place to go because all the waitresses dressed up, the waiting staff dressed up as Alice Cooper. They had the black makeup, and all the the meals were obviously to do with the song titles. So there was things like Killer Nachos, Hall of Fame salad. I think the best one was No More Mr. Nice Guy pasta, which apparently was named after what his mum's church group called him, No More Mr. Nice Guy. A colleague of mine had a big unit hot dog, which was the equivalent to like half a metre long, and what they did was they rang a bell when it turned up, so it was slightly embarrassing because you have to sit there and everyone's clapping. So it was a proper sort of experience, a fun experience to go.
I think that Alice Cooper's character is quite unique to him, his whole makeup and what he does. And there's been other bands that have been around that have kind of done the similar thing, but I think he does it best. You got Kiss and their makeup and stuff, but I just don't think it kind of levels up to Alice. He's just his own. I just can't use any other word apart from crazy, really.